and welcome to another edition of Vlog Fridays. This is my second time doing a post like this, and I have to say I already feel a lot more comfortable behind the camera, or in front of the camera rather. Maybe not that comfortable. Anyway, so today's topic is to describe your 3 favorite books. It's a bit of a show and tell, if you will. And there's actually a part 2 to today's topic, which is to identify your literary husband. So if you could be married to any literary character, who would it be? So to start off, I'd like to show you my 3 favorite books. The first book was an easy choice for me. You have to bear with me, it's not exactly a novel. It's a children's book. This book is called Eloise, and it's by Kay Thompson, and it's all about a little girl who lives at the Plaza Hotel, and she is just fabulous in every possible way, and she comes up with all kinds of crazy adventures, mostly because she's bored, and also now that I'm older and can kind of think about it a little more logically, I think she's lonely. You know, she's all alone in this big hotel, and she's a little kid, so she really has to use her imagination to keep her company. So I always related to this book growing up because my dad works for Marriott, and so whenever we'd travel or stay anywhere, we were kind of treated as the boss's daughters, and people would bring us presents, and sometimes we'd get some little perks, and once we were a little bit more grown up, we'd have things like fruit baskets in our hotel room instead of toys whenever we were staying there, and so I always kind of thought that I was Eloise. And to this day, whenever I see anything Eloise related, I just kind of remember those days fondly. So that's a fun book for me. Second one of my favorite books. This was a tough one to pick one of the series. I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. I love the books. I love the movies. I'm not one of those people who's like, well, this wasn't like the book because blah, 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 because the movies are brilliant and their own separate brilliant work of art. But I do really love the books. And it was hard to pick one book out of the whole series that was my favorite, but I went with The Half-Blood Prince. And I know that it gets kind of darker towards the end of the series, and this book especially gets a little dark towards the end. Okay, it gets really dark towards the end. But I just love the rising action setting it up for book 7. It's just really well done and just absolutely captivating. I remember reading this book and I was like, I need to read 7 now. I'm ready. But the other thing I really love about The Half-Blood Prince is it's hilarious. Those kids, once they get older and just start flirting with each other, it's really fun to read through that. So I really do love that book. The third book, kind of embarrassing, I actually don't have with me. I looked everywhere for it, and I think it's actually at my mom's house in Fort Lauderdale, which is kind of sad because now that it's not here, I really want to read it like right now, especially since the weather all weekend in Atlanta is going to be disgusting. That book is The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White, and not quite as much of a children's book as Eloise, but still not really an adult novel. All of these are really kind of children's books now that I think about it. What does that say about me? But The Trumpet of the Swan is really a great story. It's about this swan who is dumb. He's mute, and he can't honk like the other swans, and so he learns to play the trumpet, and that's how he communicates instead, and he ends up having a much more interesting life, and it makes for a much more interesting story because he's unique. And in hindsight, now that I'm an adult, looking back at that being my favorite book, my first chapter book that I read when I was in like 2nd grade or something, it's interesting that that book was so close to my heart because it's about someone with a disability and how they compensate for it. And I'm a physical therapist. That's what I do for a living, is I teach people how to compensate for their disabilities, how to move past them, how to fix them if that's possible. And yeah, if it's not possible, how to come up with an alternate route. So it's interesting that that's kind of always been with me in a way. So just because it was so hard for me to pick my 3 favorite books, I did want to briefly share with you the runners-up, Horrible Grammar. In a post about literature, I'm I'm very sorry. That's very shameful. Secret Life of Bees. Love this book. Not so much because of the book itself, but just this whole sisterhood. I'm a sucker for any book just like that. Pride and Prejudice. I hate chick flicks. Hate them. Jane Austen is an exception because her heroines are witty. And of course, The Great Gatsby, because no one writes like Fitzgerald. And that brings me to part 2 of this topic, who my literary husband would be. Well, considering the fact that most of these were children's books, I think it's safe to say not any of those characters. Probably, if I had to pick one person throughout literature to be married to, it would be Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. He's just one of the greatest heroes ever written. I think that he is one of the best men ever written. He's just a great man, a great person, a great father, a great character, and it's interesting because as much as I love To Kill a Mockingbird, I think I actually like the movie better than the book, which is rare for someone, but Gregory Peck just really captures it perfectly. And it's interesting because I am marrying an attorney, and that's who that character is, so maybe I'm a sucker for that sort of profession. I don't know. All right, well, that's all for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next Friday.